Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Ben on the Street. Today I'm joined by Hungry Talks news presenter Perri, who is going to help me with tonight's exciting interview. Tonight we'll interview Russel Howcroft, a man who needs no introduction, but I'll be sure to give it a crack. Russel first fell in love with advertising after doing a week's work experience at McCann Erickson Agency, who was later offered an 18-month contract.
In his early 20s, Russell headed to London and spent 5 years working at Low Howard Spink, one of Britain's top creative agencies. His major account was Heineken Beer, and his work on that account was considered one of Britain's best ad campaigns of its time. Russell returned to Australia to co-create his own agency, Leonardi Brandhouse. He then moved on to bigger and better things. Russell was Executive General Manager of 10 Network and one of its most senior executives, Chief Creative Officer and partner at PwC Australia, and one of the panellists on ABC's Groom and Transfer, and the list goes on.
Russel currently is the co-presenter of Melbourne's top breakfast radio programs, 3AW, Breakfast with Ross and Russell. Oh, and fun fact, Russell bought a pie factory for his 50th birthday. And Ross, he says that pies are fantastic. Russell sold the factory last year to Casper's Pies and Pastries, but during his time as owner, he invented a very unusual breakfast snack, which you can still buy. Russell, welcome.
The egg and bacon sausage roll, Ben.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. I want to try it. Sounds delicious.
Awesome. It's seriously good. I highly recommend it, Perri, as well. You give it a go. Very good. Yeah, one of the great moments in one's career, the invention of the egg and bacon sausage roll.
How did that come about?
I just said to my wife and her sister, who were running the pie business, I said, you know what? I don't think anyone's ever done an egg and bacon sausage roll. I tried a chicken Caesar salad pie. That wasn't quite as successful. It's got some merit as an idea, but the tasting wasn't quite there, as opposed to egg and bacon sausage roll, which was awesome.
Well, we'll have to try it. I feel like I shouldn't be talking about it unless I've tried it, but maybe it's one of those things like Vegemite ice cream, because it's such an odd combination. It sounds great. Yeah,
well, all it is it's egg and bacon in a pastry. There's no sausage actually there. It's just the sausage roll shape.
Now I have to ask you something a little bit more niche. Did you manage to fit the monkey and the dwarf and whoever else was the nurse or whoever else was supposed to be in that campaign, or did you fit them anywhere else?
That's a true story, Perri. Yes, we did used to sort of sit around and think, okay, what could we try and get into the one ad? A nurse, a monkey, and a dwarf was actually the story, which nearly did. We nearly did. We got 2 of the 3 in a campaign about a decade ago when I was running George Patterson. Yes, we did manage to get 2 of the 3 in a piece of advertising. And in a separate ad, in a separate campaign, we managed to get 1 of those 3. So casting plays a big role. There's a very old saying, sure you guys have all read Paul Arden's book. It's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. If you haven't read it, read it. And one of his tips, one of his advertising tips is cast against the part. Because when you're casting, what you'll normally do is cast what's obvious, or cast the cliche. And one of the ways in advertising you can cut through is by casting it against the part, right? So cast something that's unexpected.
Is it true now that why they've got this resurgence in animation in these Australian ads? We were chatting to an Australian animator just last week. Is because this casting is getting so difficult now? Yes,
that's exactly what. Well, that would be the strategic or the rationale. In particular, if you're doing government advertising, I think that illustration, cartooning can play a really strong role. Also, good illustration does cut through as well. Of course, diversity is incredibly important in advertising, and it's important that advertising does actually reflect society.
So, Russell, you began in advertising, but can you describe where your interest in TV and radio came from?
That's a good question. I know I've always just been interested in media, storytelling, media. I love, advertising is at its best when it tells stories. When it romances a brand, romances a product, that's when I always, loved the creation of advertising, which was big and telling stories. And then, TV just sort of it just knocked me on the shoulder, tapped me on the shoulder, I should say. And same with radio. Thankfully, I still am involved in the advertising world, though. Advertising is what I fundamentally love.
How have you seen the industry change then over your career? And well, could you give us a little insight? Where do you think you could see it going?
Well, it's definitely changed in that one of the big changes is that it doesn't cost you anywhere near as much money to produce advertising. And that's actually more fundamental than it might sort of initially seem or initially appear. 20 years ago, it was hard to make TV advertising, film, video advertising for less than $300,000. I mean, that was quite a normal budget. Whereas now, you guys can get out your phone, produce something, substantive. So the price of production coming down has played a massive role in the change of advertising. I mean, the first advertising campaign I worked on in 1987, the production budget was $1.2 million. Writing is still the fundamental spine to good advertising. Good writing is really what matters, and that's what's always mattered. So I suppose my perspective on the future is that the writer, those with the ability to write will still rise to the top. And those that want to have a career in the advertising world would be very wise to concentrate on writing and concentrate on what it means to be a great advertising writer, or recognise good writers when they see them and work with them.
Yeah. Now talking about Gruen Transfer, amazing show. How did you land that role in Gruen? Were you approached? Did you apply or?
No, I didn't apply. No, well, the story goes. I used to be on the radio on ABC Radio in the afternoons, once every couple of weeks. Andrew Denton heard me on the radio, and he was sort of formulating an idea in his mind that a TV show that unpicked the world of advertising might be interesting. And I got a phone call, and I was asked to a screen test. And it turns out that was a successful screen test. So obviously not for looks, but I was asked to talk. I was asked to talk about ads. So I like talking about ads. So that was okay. I was in a comfortable position. And then one thing led to another, and away we go. More than 10 years later, it's about to start again.
Season 13 or something is it up to now? Coming out, I think, next month. Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
What book should every entry-level advertising student, or whatever we are, junior advertiser, read? Since you're fanatic about a good writer.
Well, there's a few books that you should read, if I may. Yeah. So Al Rees and Jack Trout, Rees and Trout, they wrote a number of books. So the original one was called Positioning. Outstanding. The next book was called Marketing Warfare. And the next book was called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. They are in that order of power. Book 1, 2, 3. Outstanding books. Paul Arden's It's Not How Good You Are, It's How Good You Want to Be. That's a very important book to read. Theodore Levitt, that's more in the marketing side, but you do need to read that. Outstanding academic, of course. There's a book which is called When It's Right to Be Wrong. You can look up who the author is of that.
Really?
And there's
this one.
That one. And there's a book called Right Brain Workout, 1 and 2. Again, you can look up the co-author of that. But I do recommend those that are in advertising, whether you're in the tertiary education or if you move into the industry, it's very, very important that you really get stuck into the literature around the world of advertising.
All right. Well, thank you, Russell. That's all the questions that we have for today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for taking the time out to come on here. So that's it for Ben on the Straight for this episode. Now we're going back to Alana and Bella at the studio. See you there.